Touch the leaves of a Mimosa pudica plant, and it immediately folds inward. The plant lacks a central brain, yet it detects the physical contact and executes a precise mechanical defense. That touch is a stimulus, a distinct change in the surrounding environment. To stay alive, every organism on Earth must continuously pick up on these changes, whether it's the ambient temperature, the angle of the sun, or an approaching predator. But detecting a change is only half the problem. The organism then has to process that incoming data to trigger a coordinated, life-saving reaction, often without a single conscious thought. Nature solved this processing problem by developing two distinct communication networks. One is a high-speed electrical grid. The other is a slower, highly targeted chemical delivery system. Evolutionary success relies on this internal logistic system. Survival is determined by how fast and how accurately a body can route information from a detector to an effector. In humans, that high-speed grid is the nervous system. The brain and spinal cord act as the central processing unit, while a vast peripheral network of nerves reaches every muscle and sensory organ, firing constant electrical impulses to map the outside world. This diagram shows the structural unit of that grid, the neuron. A single nerve cell consists of a main cell body equipped with tiny branches called dendrites to receive incoming signals. That signal is then fired down a long insulated cable called an axon, which carries the message outward. But these billions of neurons do not physically touch. They are separated by minute gaps called synapses. To bridge this divide, the electrical impulse is briefly converted into a chemical format, allowing the information to drift across the gap and trigger the receiving cell. In the 2nd century, the Greek physician Galen noticed that a patient with a neck injury lost sensation in his arm, yet could still move it perfectly. He deduced that this network runs on two separate directional tracks: sensory nerves carrying data inward, and motor nerves carrying instructions outward. This cross-section of a spinal cord illustrates how those tracks connect during an emergency reflex. If you step on a sharp object, the sensory nerve sends a pain signal towards the center. Instead of traveling all the way up to the brain for processing, the signal loops directly through the spinal cord and straight back out the motor nerve to contract your leg muscle. We know this exact bypass exists thanks to early experiments by Leonardo da Vinci and Stephen Hales. They observed that frogs could still withdraw their limbs from a painful pinch even after their brains were completely removed. The reaction only stopped when the spinal cord itself was destroyed. By removing the brain from the equation entirely, the reflex arc eliminates the time required for conscious thought. It trades complex processing for raw, involuntary speed, when milliseconds mean the difference between minor injury and severe damage. However, not every bodily function requires a split-second muscle contraction. For sustained systemic control, the body relies on the endocrine system. This network uses ductless glands to secrete hormones, specialized chemical messengers, directly into the bloodstream, broadcasting instructions to organs throughout the body. The pancreas uses this precise method to regulate our internal fuel supply. When the amount of free sugar in the blood spikes, specialized patches of tissue inside the organ release the hormone insulin to bring those levels down. The exact source of this chemical remained hidden until 1922, when researchers Banting and Best managed to extract insulin from degenerated animal pancreases. By injecting this extract into diabetic subjects, they successfully stabilized blood sugar. The pancreas controls this output through a negative feedback loop. As insulin does its job and blood glucose drops back to a safe baseline, the gland detects the correction and automatically scales back its hormone production. Animals use this chemical system to complement their electrical nervous system. Plants, which lack nerves entirely, depend on hormones to govern almost every aspect of their behavior. Charles Darwin and his son Francis demonstrated this by exposing seedlings to a directional light source. They found that if they covered the very tip of the stem with metal foil, the plant grew straight. But if the tip was exposed, it detected the light and transmitted an invisible influence downwards, causing the entire stem to bend toward the sun. This diagram recreates how physiologist F.W. Wendt eventually isolated that influence. He placed the cut tips of oat seedlings onto blocks of agar, letting the plant's chemicals soak in. When he placed those blocks off-center on decapitated stems in complete darkness, the stems still bent. He had captured the chemical stimulus, the first discovered plant hormone, called auxin. Auxin drives this bending, known as phototropism, through a mechanical imbalance. The hormone actively migrates away from the light, pooling on the shaded side of the stem. The high concentration of auxin weakens the cell walls there, forcing those specific cells to grow faster and longer than the cells facing the sun. By moving a chemical from one side of a stem to the other, a plant dictates its own shape. It is a methodical tuning process that physically builds the organism's response to its environment directly into its anatomy. In complex animals, these two networks collaborate to mount a defense. If a threat approaches, your sensory nerves process the danger and send rapid electrical signals to your adrenal glands. The glands respond with a flood of adrenaline, a hormone that instantly increases your heart rate and dilates your pupils to prepare for a physical reaction. That sudden burst of survival energy relies on the same basic principles as the silent, creeping adjustments of a plant. Roots slowly probe the earth for moisture via hydrotropism and anchor themselves downward using gravity, guided entirely by shifting concentrations of chemical hormones. Whether it is a human pulling their foot away from a sharp edge in a fraction of a second, or a vine wrapping its tendrils around a window frame, every action requires a coordinated flow of internal information. Life relies on reading the surrounding environment and deploying exact responses. Stripped down to its core networks, every living organism functions as a highly advanced biological computer, continuously processing inputs to navigate a changing universe.